Think of one person, just one, who changed your life in a way you never recovered from. What if I told you they were never a mistake? According to Edgar Cayce, you didn't just meet them, you chose them. Stay with me, because once you see this clearly, you won't look at that person the same way again. In this video, I'm going to show you why the people who hurt you the most may have been the most important souls in your entire life. And no, this isn't about blaming yourself, but it will change how you see everything that happened. There are people who come into your life, and then there are people who stay with you, not physically, not always, but internally. You carry them in your thoughts, in your reactions, in the way you approach relationships now. Sometimes it's subtle, a hesitation before trusting someone new, a feeling you can't quite explain when something reminds you of them, a moment where you catch yourself thinking, "I've been here before." And other times, it's not subtle at all. It's heavy. It's the kind of memory that doesn't fade, the kind of experience that reshaped how you see everything. Maybe it was someone you loved deeply, someone you believed in, someone you trusted with parts of yourself you don't easily give away, and then something happened, something that didn't just disappoint you, but changed you, and no matter how much time passes, there's still a part of you that goes back to it. Not because you want to relive it, but because it never fully resolved. Because something about it still doesn't make sense. And that's the part that matters. Because when something doesn't make sense, we look for meaning. Human beings don't handle randomness well. We can handle pain. We can handle loss. We can even handle disappointment. But what's hardest to accept is when something feels completely meaningless. When something just happens, without explanation, without reason, without context. Because if it's meaningless, then it was unnecessary. And if it was unnecessary, then it didn't need to happen at all. And that's the part we resist. We don't just want to know what happened. We want to know why it happened. And when we can't find an answer, we create one. Sometimes we blame ourselves. Sometimes we blame the other person. Sometimes we try to convince ourselves that it just wasn't meant to be. But none of those answers fully satisfy the deeper question. Because the deeper question isn't logical. It's emotional. It's personal. It's the part of you that still feels like, there has to be more to this. This is where Edgar Cayce's perspective becomes different. Because he didn't look at life as a series of isolated events. He saw it as a pattern, a structure, something that extended beyond a single lifetime. And within that structure, he described something that challenges everything we're taught to believe, that certain people enter your life, not randomly, but deliberately, not as accidents, but as intersections, moments where something needs to happen, something needs to shift, something needs to be revealed, and the people involved in those moments play a role in that process, not always a comfortable role, not always a welcome one, but a significant one. Now let's slow this down, because this is where most people misunderstand the idea completely. When we say, you chose them, that doesn't mean you chose the pain. It doesn't mean you chose betrayal. It doesn't mean you chose to be hurt. What it means is something more subtle. You may have chosen the experience that required that person to show up. There's a difference between choosing pain and choosing growth that includes discomfort. And according to Cayce, the soul is far more focused on growth than comfort. Now think about the person you had in mind. They didn't just pass through your life. They affected you. They triggered something. They changed something. Maybe they broke your trust. Maybe they forced you to see something you were avoiding. Maybe they pushed you out of something you would have stayed in too long. Or maybe they simply showed you what you will never accept again. And while that experience may have felt like destruction at the time, there's a part of it that was also revelation. Not comfortable, not welcome, but real. Pain by itself feels meaningless. It feels like something that shouldn't have happened. Something that disrupted your life for no reason. Something that took more from you than it ever gave back. And when something feels meaningless, it becomes heavier to carry because there's no place to put it. There's no explanation that satisfies it. No reason that makes it easier to accept. No way to mentally close the loop. But when pain begins to connect to purpose, something shifts. Not immediately and not all at once, but gradually. You start to see that the experience didn't just leave damage behind. It also left awareness. It left understanding. It left something in you that wasn't there before. Maybe it taught you what you need. Maybe it showed you what you were tolerating. Maybe it revealed a pattern you didn't even know you were repeating. And once you begin to see that, the experience changes shape. It's no longer just something that happened to you. It becomes something that revealed something to you. And that doesn't erase the pain, but it does give it somewhere to go. There comes a moment, and it doesn't always arrive when you expect it, where you look back and something feels different. Not the memory itself, not the facts of what happened, but your understanding of it. You start to notice things you didn't see before. You start to connect pieces that didn't seem connected at the time. You realize that certain decisions you made afterward, certain changes you went through, certain boundaries you now hold, all trace back to that experience. And that's when recognition begins. You recognize that what felt like an ending may have actually been a turning point. You recognize that what felt like loss may have created space for something else to enter your life later. You recognize that you are not the same person you were before it happened. And once that recognition settles in, even a little, something important happens. The experience begins to integrate instead of just linger. Here is the part that most people don't want to sit with, but it matters. If that person had treated you differently, if they had stayed, if they had been everything you wanted them to be, there is a very real possibility that nothing in you would have changed. You might have stayed in the same patterns, accepted the same dynamics, continued in the same direction without ever questioning it. Comfort has a way of keeping things exactly where they are, and sometimes it takes disruption to break that. Not gentle discomfort, not small inconveniences, but something strong enough to interrupt everything you thought was stable. Something that forces you to step back and reevaluate. Something that creates enough friction that you can no longer ignore what's happening. And that's where growth often begins. Not in the moments that feel good, but in the moments that force you to see clearly. It's important to understand what this perspective is not. This is not about blaming yourself for what happened. It's not about taking responsibility for someone else's actions, or trying to rewrite the past in a way that excuses what hurt you. You are not responsible for the choices someone else made. You are not responsible for the way they treated you, and nothing about this idea changes that. What this perspective offers is not blame, but context. It offers a way to look at the experience without reducing it to something random or meaningless. It allows you to separate what happened from what it revealed. And that distinction matters because without it, everything stays tangled together. With it, you can begin to understand without having to justify. At some point, the question stops being about the past and starts becoming about the present. What do you do with what you've learned? What do you do with what you now see more clearly? Because awareness by itself doesn't change anything unless it leads to a different choice. And this is where things begin to shift in a very real way. You start to respond differently. You start to recognize situations earlier. You start to make decisions that align more with what you've learned rather than what you've repeated. And slowly, your life begins to reflect those changes. Not because everything becomes easier, but because you're no longer moving through the same patterns unconsciously. You're aware, and awareness changes direction. There is a realization that doesn't come all at once, but when it does come, it changes how you see everything that led up to it. Sometimes the person who hurt you the most was not there to build something with you. They were there to reveal something within you. They were there to bring something to the surface that would not have surfaced otherwise. And in that process, even though it didn't feel like it at the time, something in you began to change. You became more aware of yourself. You became more aware of what matters to you. You became more aware of what you will and will not accept. And those changes didn't happen because everything went right. They happened because something went wrong in a way that forced you to see clearly. And clarity, once it's gained, doesn't disappear. So when you think about that person now, the one who still lingers in your mind, the one who still feels unresolved in some way, you have a choice in how you continue to carry that experience. You can carry it as something that only hurt you, or you can begin to carry it as something that revealed something to you. Not immediately, not perfectly, but gradually. Because the meaning you give to the experience shapes how it lives in your life moving forward. And when you begin to see it differently, even slightly, it loses some of its weight. Not because it didn't matter, but because you now understand more about what it did. And according to Edgar Cayce, the people who enter your life at the most critical moments are not there by accident. They are part of something that unfolds over time. Something that you don't always understand in the moment, but something that becomes clearer when you're ready to see it. If this spoke to you, don't just move on from it. Sit with it for a moment, because most people go their entire lives asking why certain things happen to them, and never realize they're asking the wrong question. The real shift begins when you stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What did this experience show me that I was never seeing before?" And if even a part of this feels true for you, then you're already starting to see things differently. There's a lot more to this than most people realize, and once you begin to understand how these patterns work, you start to recognize them earlier, you start to respond differently, and your life begins to move in a completely different direction. So if you're ready to go deeper into this, subscribe, because in the next videos we're going to break this down even further. The signs, the patterns, and the moments where these connections are happening in real time. And before you go, I want you to do one simple thing. Think of that person again, the one you had in your mind at the beginning, and instead of focusing on what they did, ask yourself this: what did this experience awaken in me that I would not have discovered any other way? Because sometimes, the most difficult people in your life don't come to stay. They come to reveal, and once you see that clearly, you don't just understand your past differently, you start to live your future differently too. I'll see you in the next one.